She stepped onto her own private jet, wearing jeans and carrying her own bag, and the captain looked at her like she didn't belong. Row 3, aisle seat, perfectly assigned, until he appeared in the cabin with that look, that tone, ordering her to move to the back for weight and balance. She watched the other passengers, the white ones in first class, stay exactly where they were. She felt every eye on her as she walked that aisle, humiliation burning in her chest, while he stood there satisfied, convinced he'd sorted things out. But here's what Captain Hale didn't know. The woman he just sent to the back of the plane owns the plane, the company, and his entire career. And when they land, she'll have a choice: destroy him or do something harder. Subscribe right now and tell me where you're watching from, because this story about power, dignity, and what real justice looks like will stay with you. Amara Lewis woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. The morning light filtered through her bedroom curtains. She reached for the device without opening her eyes fully. 3 messages from Marcus waited on the screen, each one more urgent than the last. The final one said they needed to discuss the charter company culture before her flight. She sat up and scrolled through the quarterly reports. The numbers were solid. The customer satisfaction scores were acceptable, but the employee complaints told a different story. Small things, patterns of disrespect toward certain staff members, complaints that went nowhere. She made a note to herself. "I need to see this for myself," she said to her empty bedroom. An hour later, she stood in her closet, choosing clothes. Marcus had suggested arriving with an entourage. She chose jeans and a simple sweater instead. Her leather bag was expensive but understated. Amara felt curious about what she would find. She wanted to observe the company as any passenger would. No announcements, no special treatment. Her phone rang as she headed downstairs. Naomi's name appeared on the screen. Her mother always seemed to know when something important was happening. "Morning, Mama," Amara said. "You sound like you're heading somewhere." Her voice was warm. "First flight on one of my planes, going incognito." Naomi was quiet for a moment. "Remember who you are, baby, even when they forget." Amara felt something tighten in her chest. Those words carried weight. Her mother had spent decades being overlooked in waiting rooms and offices, being told where she could and couldn't sit. "I will," Amara said. "Good. Call me when you land." The driver was waiting outside. He loaded her bag without comment. They drove through the city streets in comfortable silence. Amara watched the buildings pass. She thought about the acquisition. 3 months of negotiations, lawyers and accountants reviewing every document. The company was hers now. But ownership on paper meant nothing if the culture was broken. She needed to see it from the inside. Feel what her customers felt. Notice what her employees endured or ignored. The car pulled up to the private terminal. Amara looked at the sleek building. Her building now, her planes, her responsibility. She stepped out carrying her own bag. The morning air was cool. She walked toward the entrance with steady steps. Amara felt determined to observe everything. The way staff greeted passengers, who received smiles, who received efficiency without warmth. She would watch it all. The terminal lobby was elegant and quiet. Amara approached the reception desk. A young woman sat behind the counter, scrolling through her phone. Amara waited. The receptionist glanced up briefly. Her expression didn't change. She returned to her phone. "Excuse me," Amara said. Her voice was pleasant. The woman looked up again. "Name?" "Amara Lewis." The receptionist typed slowly. She found the reservation. "Flight 402 to Charlotte. Boarding in 20 minutes." She slid a boarding pass across the counter. Amara felt the coolness in her tone. Professional, but distant. She took the pass and stepped away from the desk. An older white man in a business suit approached behind her. The receptionist straightened immediately. Her voice was bright. "Good morning, Mr. Patterson. How wonderful to see you again." Amara paused near a leather chair. She watched the exchange. The woman's smile was genuine now. She chatted easily about his recent travels, asked about his family. Something shifted in Amara's expression. The difference was small but unmistakable. She had received efficiency. He received warmth. She moved into the waiting area. Several passengers sat scattered across the space. A coffee station stood in the corner. Amara walked to the coffee. She poured herself a cup. No one offered to help. She noticed a staff member approaching Mr. Patterson with a fresh pastry on a plate. Her chest tightened slightly. This was what the complaints had hinted at. Not overt discrimination. Just subtle differences in attention and respect. A Latina woman in a crisp uniform entered the waiting area. Her badge read, "Elena Ortiz, Senior Flight Attendant." She scanned the room with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Patterson," Elena said warmly, "so good to have you with us again." "Always a pleasure, Elena." His voice was friendly. Elena moved through the space greeting frequent flyers by name. Her smile was genuine for some, polite for others. When she reached Amara, her expression shifted to professional courtesy. "Good morning. Are you on Flight 402? "I am," Amara said. "Wonderful. We'll begin boarding shortly." Elena's tone was courteous but cooler. Amara felt the difference again. She watched Elena return to the familiar passengers. The warmth returned to her voice instantly. Amara sat down with her coffee. She pulled out her phone and made notes. Names. Interactions. The subtle geography of respect in the waiting room. 10 minutes. Later, Elena announced boarding. "Flight 402 to Charlotte is now ready for boarding. All passengers may proceed to the aircraft." Amara stood and gathered her bag. She followed the other passengers toward the glass doors. The plane waited on the tarmac. Sleek and expensive. Her plane. Her breath caught slightly at the thought. The cabin was beautiful. Amara stepped inside and took in the cream leather seats. The wood trim gleamed. Everything was pristine. She watched the other passengers claim their spots. Mr. Patterson moved directly to a spacious seat in row 2. An older couple settled into row 1. Both looked comfortable and entitled to be there. Amara moved forward. She chose an aisle seat in row 3. She placed her bag in the overhead compartment with practiced ease. Elena appeared beside her. Her eyes flickered to Amara's seat. Something shifted in her expression. Hesitation. Uncertainty. "Is this seat all right?" Amara asked. Her voice was calm. "Of course." Elena's voice was tight. She moved on quickly. Amara sat down and buckled her seatbelt. She felt the weight of eyes on her. A middle-aged man in row 4 was staring. His suit was expensive. His expression was annoyed. She looked out the window. The tarmac stretched away toward other planes. She could feel his gaze still fixed on her back. More passengers boarded. A young couple headed straight to the rear seats without question. An older woman in pearls took row 5 after glancing at the forward seats with longing. Amara noticed the patterns. Who claimed the front? Who accepted the back? Who questioned their placement? Who didn't? The annoyed businessman finally spoke. His voice carried through the cabin. "Excuse me, miss." He was addressing Amara. She turned. "Yes?" "Are you sure you're in the right row? Those seats are usually for passengers who fly with us regularly." Amara felt something cold settle in her stomach. She kept her voice steady. "My seat assignment is 3B. This is 3B. I'm just saying, Sometimes there are upgrades, mix-ups. You might be more comfortable further back." His tone suggested helpfulness, but his eyes revealed irritation. "I'm comfortable here, thank you." Amara turned back to the window. The man huffed. He muttered something under his breath. Amara caught the words, "entitled" and "doesn't understand." Elena passed again. She had definitely heard the exchange. Her eyes found Amara's for a brief moment. Then she offered a tight smile and moved toward the cockpit. Amara's breath caught. This was it. The exact dynamic the complaints had described, the assumptions, the territorial behavior, the silent hierarchy. She pulled out her phone and typed a note. "Passenger in 4C questioned my seat in 3B. Suggested I move back. E. Ortiz overheard. No intervention." Her hands were steady. Her chest was tight. She had experienced this feeling countless times before. In restaurants, in stores, in lobbies of nice hotels. But this was her plane, her company, and she was still being told she didn't belong in the front. Amara looked around the cabin. No one met her eyes now. They were all busy with phones or magazines, deliberately not noticing. The last passengers filed aboard. Amara watched Elena check seat assignments on her tablet. The flight attendant's movements were brisk and professional. The businessman in 4C leaned forward. His voice was lower now, but still audible. "I fly this route twice a month. Those forward seats are reserved for elite members. I don't know how she got that assignment." He was speaking to Mr. Patterson. The older man glanced back uncomfortably. "I'm sure it's fine, David." "It's the principle," David continued. "There's a system. People work hard to earn those privileges." Amara felt her jaw tighten. She understood what he was really saying. She didn't look like someone who belonged there. She hadn't earned it. Elena approached David's row. "Can I get you anything before takeoff, Mr. Richardson?" "Yes. I'd like to confirm that all seat assignments are correct." His voice was pointed. "They are," Elena said. Her voice was firm. "Even row 3? He tilted his head toward Amara. The silence stretched. Amara felt every passenger's attention shift. Elena's expression was unreadable. "Yes, Mr. Richardson. All assignments are correct." Elena's tone left no room for argument. She moved away before he could respond. Amara felt a flicker of gratitude, but Elena's eyes were troubled when they met hers briefly. David sat back heavily. He muttered something about standards declining. Mr. Patterson pretended to read his magazine. Amara's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "How's the flight looking?" she typed back. "Revealing." Her breath caught as she hit send. This was only boarding. They hadn't even taken off yet. What would the rest of the flight bring? Elena made another pass through the cabin. She stopped at Amara's row. Her voice was quiet. "I apologize for any discomfort. Sometimes passengers can be particular about their preferences." "It's not your fault," Amara said. She meant it. Something shifted in Elena's expression, relief mixed with shame. She nodded and moved on. Amara understood that look. Elena had seen this before. She had let it happen before. Maybe she had even participated before. The younger couple in the back whispered. Amara couldn't hear the words, but she could imagine them, speculating about who she was, whether she belonged, why she hadn't moved. She closed her eyes briefly. Naomi's words echoed. "Remember who you are, baby, even when they forget." Amara felt the familiar weight settle on her shoulders, the exhaustion of constant proof, the burden of having to justify her presence in spaces others entered without question. But she also felt something else. Determination. This wasn't just about one flight. It was about every person who had sat in these seats, every staff member who had seen it, and said nothing. The cockpit door opened. A pilot stepped out. His uniform was crisp. His hair was silver. He looked confident and competent. His eyes swept the cabin. They lingered on Amara. Something flickered across his face. Captain Richard Hale stood in the aisle. He smiled at the passengers in rows 1 and 2. His voice was warm. "Good morning, folks. Beautiful day for flying. We'll have you in Charlotte in just under 2 hours." Mr. Patterson nodded. "Always feel safe with you at the controls, Captain." "Appreciate that, sir." Hale's voice was genuine. He moved down the aisle. His gaze shifted to Amara. The warmth faded. His eyes narrowed slightly. Amara met his look steadily. She felt the shift in his demeanor. Professional distance replaced the easy friendliness. Hale pulled a tablet from his pocket. He scrolled through what looked like a passenger manifest. His brow tightened. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was clipped. "Yes?" Amara's tone was pleasant. "Just conducting a routine safety check, making sure everyone's comfortable." He gestured vaguely toward the rear of the plane. "I'm quite comfortable," Amara said. Something shifted in his expression. Irritation flashed briefly. He covered it with a practiced smile. "Excellent. We'll be pushing back momentarily." He nodded and continued toward the back. Amara watched him greet the other passengers. The warmth returned when he spoke to the couple in pearls. His voice was casual and friendly again. Elena stood near the galley. Her eyes found Hale's. They exchanged a look. Brief but significant. He shook his head slightly. She pressed her lips together. Amara felt her stomach tighten. Something was being communicated. A decision was being made. About her. Hale returned to the cockpit. Elena began the safety demonstration. Her voice was clear and practiced. "Good morning, everyone. Federal regulations require that we review the safety features of this aircraft." Amara listened with half her attention. The other half was focused on the tension she felt building. Something was wrong. She couldn't name it yet, but she felt it. The cabin door closed with a solid thunk. Elena finished her demonstration. She moved through checking seatbelts. When she reached Amara, her hands trembled slightly. "Seatbelt secure?" "Yes," Amara said. She studied Elena's face. "Are you all right?" "Fine," Elena said quickly. She moved on. Amara's breath caught. Elena was scared, or conflicted. Maybe both. The engines started. Their low rumble filled the cabin. Amara looked out the window. The ground crew was pulling away the wheel chocks. The cockpit door opened again. Hale emerged. His expression was set. Professional, but firm. He walked directly toward row 3. Amara felt her heart rate increase. Every passenger was watching now. The cabin had gone silent except for the engine noise. Hale stopped beside her seat. He looked down at her. His eyes were cold. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me." Amara looked up at Captain Hale. His face was stern. She kept her voice steady. "Is there a problem?" "We have a weight and balance issue," Hale said. His tone was matter-of-fact. "I need you to move to a seat in the rear section." The cabin remained silent. Amara felt every eye on her. She glanced at the other passengers in the forward rows. None of them were being asked to move. "Which seat?" she asked. "Row 8. Elena will show you." He gestured toward the flight attendant. Amara felt anger rising. She pushed it down. "Can you explain the weight and balance issue? I'd like to understand." Something shifted in Hale's expression. Impatience. "It's a technical matter. Company policy. For safety." "I see." Amara's voice was calm. "And the other passengers in the forward section don't need to move?" "No, ma'am. Their seat assignments account for the proper distribution." His voice was harder now. David Richardson spoke from row 4. "Captain knows what he's doing. Safety first." His tone was satisfied. Amara felt the sting of humiliation. It burned in her chest. She could argue. She could refuse. She could reveal who she was right now. But she also knew what that would look like. Angry. Difficult. Proving exactly what they already believed about her. Her hands rested on the armrests. Her fingers wanted to grip tightly. She kept them relaxed. This was about more than one seat. More than one flight. Elena appeared beside Hale. Her voice was quiet. "Row 8 is ready, Captain." "Good." Hale looked at Amara expectantly. Amara's breath caught. She thought of Naomi. Her mother had swallowed this feeling hundreds of times. Thousands. She had moved to the back of buses, waited in separate lines, accepted indignity to survive. But Amara owned this plane, this company. These people worked for her, and they didn't know. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. The click was loud in the quiet cabin. She stood and reached for her bag overhead. Hale stepped back to give her room. His expression was satisfied. He had won. The proper order was being restored. Amara pulled down her bag. She felt the weight of shame. Not her shame. The shame of being made small, of being told she didn't belong where she had every right to be. Elena's eyes were wet. She looked away quickly. "This way, please," she whispered. Amara walked down the aisle. Her steps were steady. Her head was high. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her broken. But inside, something was breaking. Or maybe it was breaking open, making space for the anger she would need later. The aisle felt endless. Amara passed row after row. She felt every passenger's eyes following her. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked pleased. Row 8 was cramped. The seats were smaller. The overhead space was already full. Elena helped her find room for her bag 2 rows back. "I'm so sorry," Elena whispered. Her voice was barely audible. Amara sat down. The seat was uncomfortable. She could feel the engine vibration more strongly here. "Not your fault," she said. But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Elena had watched. She had known. She had said nothing. Elena moved away quickly. Amara buckled her seatbelt. Her hands were shaking now. She pressed them against her thighs. The engines grew louder. The plane began to push back from the gate. Hale's voice came over the intercom. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure." His voice was smooth, professional, as if nothing had happened. Amara felt the plane turn. They were taxiing now. She looked out the small window beside her. The terminal was receding. Her phone buzzed. She looked down. Marcus had sent another message. "Let me know how it goes. Hope you're getting good insights." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed slowly. "We need to talk about Captain Hale after landing." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The message was clear, intentional. Marcus would understand. Something had happened. Something that required action. The phone switched to airplane mode. The screen went dark. Amara stared at her reflection in the black glass. She looked tired. Sad. But also determined. This was what she had needed to see. The reality beneath the quarterly reports. The lived experience of her customers. Except she wasn't just a customer. She was the owner. And Captain Hale had just ordered her to the back of her own plane. Amara felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not just anger now, something sharper. Resolve. The plane accelerated down the taxiway. She could feel the power building. They were approaching the runway. Elena passed again. She didn't look at Amara. Her shoulders were tense. Her movements were tight. Amara watched her move through the cabin. Elena stopped to check on the forward passengers. Her smile was strained. Mr. Patterson said something. She nodded. The plane turned onto the runway. The engines roared. Amara felt herself pressed back into the uncomfortable seat. They lifted off. The ground fell away. Charlotte and its familiar skyline disappeared behind clouds. Amara closed her eyes. She thought about what would happen when they landed. She thought about the conversation she would have with Marcus, with her legal team, with Captain Hale. But most of all, she thought about all the people who had sat in these rear seats before her, who had accepted humiliation because they had no choice, no power, no ownership. She had all three, and she would use them. The plane climbed steadily. Amara watched the clouds stream past her window. The morning sun painted them gold and pink. It was beautiful. She felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt everything. Humiliation, rage, sadness, and beneath it all, a bone-deep exhaustion that came from decades of these small violations. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Elena's voice came through the speakers. "You're now free to move about the cabin. We'll begin beverage service momentarily." Amara unbuckled but didn't stand. She pulled out a notepad from her bag. She began writing. Not just notes now, a full account. Times, names, exact words spoken. She wrote about the receptionist's different greetings, Elena's warmer welcome to familiar faces, David Richardson's territorial challenge, the older passengers who watched and said nothing. And she wrote about Captain Hale, his inspection, his cold assessment, his fabricated justification, his satisfaction when she complied. Her hand moved quickly across the page. This was evidence now. Documentation. The foundation for what came next. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me." Amara looked up. An older white man stood in the aisle. His face was kind. His eyes were troubled. "Yes," she said. "I'm Gerald Whitman. I was sitting in row 1. He paused. "I wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened during boarding." Something shifted in Amara's expression. She studied his face. He seemed genuine. "Thank you." "It wasn't right," Gerald continued. "That business about weight and balance, I'm a retired judge. I know what manufactured justification looks like." Amara felt her chest tighten. Someone had seen. Someone was saying it out loud. "You noticed." "Everyone noticed," Gerald said quietly. "Most chose not to see." The honesty in his voice cut through her anger. She gestured to the empty seat beside her. "Would you like to sit?" He sat carefully. His hands rested on his knees. "I should have said something then. I didn't. That makes me complicit." "Why didn't you?" Amara asked. Her voice wasn't accusatory. She genuinely wanted to know. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Fear, maybe. Discomfort. The social cost of challenging authority in front of others. All the usual excuses. Amara's breath caught. He was taking responsibility, not defending himself, not minimizing, just acknowledging his failure. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "What will you do?" Gerald asked. "When we land." Amara looked at him. She made a decision. "I'm going to address it, systematically, starting with Captain Hale." Something shifted in Gerald's expression, respect mixed with curiosity. "You sound like someone with authority to make changes." "I am," Amara said simply. Understanding dawned in Gerald's eyes. He didn't ask for details, he just nodded. "If you need a witness statement, I'll provide one." "I might," Amara said. "Thank you." Gerald stood. He extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm. "Do what needs to be done, but do it with mercy. That's what real power looks like." He returned to his seat. Amara watched him go. His words echoed in her mind. Mercy. Power. Justice. She looked down at her notepad. The documentation was thorough. The case was clear. She had the authority to fire Hale immediately, to make an example of him. But what would that actually change? Would it reform the culture? Would it teach anyone anything? Or would it just be revenge dressed up as justice? Amara felt the plane begin its descent. The pilot's voice came through the speakers. Hale's voice, still smooth, still professional, announcing their approach into Charlotte. She closed her notepad. She looked out the window at the city appearing below. She thought about Naomi, about dignity, about the difference between punishment and transformation. When they landed, she would confront not just a man. She would confront a system, a culture, a legacy of assumptions and biases that had operated unchecked for too long, and she would do it with clarity, with precision, with the kind of power that changed things permanently. Amara buckled her seatbelt for landing. Her jaw was set. Her mind was clear. She was ready. The plane leveled at cruising altitude. The engine noise settled into a steady hum. Conversations resumed in the forward cabin. Laughter drifted back from row 2. Amara sat in the rear section surrounded by quiet. The young couple across the aisle read magazines. An older woman 2 rows up dozed with her head against the window. Elena appeared from the galley pushing a beverage cart. Her smile was bright for the forward passengers. Amara watched her stop at each row, offering drinks, making small talk. "Mr. Patterson, your usual scotch?" Elena's voice was warm. "You know me well, Elena." He chuckled. David Richardson accepted a gin and tonic with a satisfied nod. The couple in pearls received wine with cheerful commentary about the weather. Elena moved through the cabin efficiently. Her professionalism was impeccable. But Amara noticed how the warmth dimmed as she approached the rear section. When Elena reached her row, the smile was polite, professional, nothing more. "What can I get you?" Elena asked. Her eyes didn't quite meet Amara's. "Water, please," Amara said. Elena poured from a bottle. She set the plastic cup on Amara's tray table. No napkin, no friendly comment. "Anything else?" The question was clipped. Amara felt the difference acutely. She kept her voice gentle. "Actually, yes, I wanted to apologize." Something shifted in Elena's expression. Confusion replaced the distant professionalism. "Apologize? For what?" "For the inconvenience, the seating issue. I didn't mean to cause problems." Amara's tone was sincere. Elena's hands tightened on the cart handle. "You didn't cause anything. That was—" She stopped herself. The silence stretched between them. Amara waited. She could see Elena struggling with something. Loyalty, fear, conscience. "Sorry for the inconvenience," Elena finally said. Her voice was stiff. "Captain's orders, last-minute changes, weight distribution, you understand?" Amara felt sad for her. Elena was reciting the script, the acceptable explanation. The company line. "Is it really about safety?" Amara asked quietly. Elena's breath caught. Her eyes found Amara's. For a moment the mask slipped. Pain flickered across her face. Then she looked away. "I should continue service." She pushed the cart forward quickly. Amara watched her go. The question hung in the air. Unanswered, but understood. They both knew the truth. She sipped her water. The plastic cup felt cheap in her hand. She thought about the crystal glasses being used in first class. Her planes, her glasses, her employees treating passengers differently based on appearance. Gerald appeared in the aisle again. He held a coffee cup. His expression was thoughtful. "Mind if I sit again?" he asked. "Please," Amara said. He settled into the seat beside her. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Just two people sharing an uncomfortable truth. "She knows," Gerald said quietly. "The flight attendant. She knows it wasn't about weight." Amara felt grateful for his honesty. "Yes." Gerald sipped his coffee. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "I've been flying this route for 10 years, since I retired. I've seen things, small things, patterns." "What kinds of things?" Amara asked. "Who gets upgraded? Who gets asked to move? Who gets the warm welcome and who gets the cold checklist?" He paused. "I told myself it was random, coincidence." "But it's not," Amara said. "No," Gerald said, "it's not." Amara felt something shift between them, a shared understanding, an acknowledgement of uncomfortable truth. "You were a judge," she said. "You spent your career weighing evidence, looking for patterns. Why did you look away here?" The question wasn't accusatory. She genuinely wanted to understand how good people participated in bad systems. Gerald was quiet. He stared into his coffee. When he looked up, his eyes were troubled. Because acknowledging it would require action, and action would be uncomfortable, socially awkward, maybe even costly. He paused. "I'm ashamed to admit that." Amara felt her chest tighten. His honesty was painful and rare. "How often has procedure been used as an excuse?" she asked. "In your courtroom days, how many times did you see policy weaponized to justify unfairness?" Gerald's expression darkened. "Too many. Officers claiming reasonable suspicion, prosecutors citing protocol, judges hiding behind precedent." "And when you saw it, what did you do?" Amara's voice was gentle but firm. "Sometimes I challenged it, sometimes I didn't. Depended on my courage that day." He looked at her directly. "I wasn't always courageous." The silence hung between them. Amara appreciated his willingness to be vulnerable, to name his failures. "What about today?" she asked. "Today I failed," Gerald said. "I should have spoken up when the captain ordered you to move. I should have questioned the justification. I stayed silent." "Why are you speaking now?" Amara asked. Gerald set down his coffee. His hands were steady. "Because you asked the flight attendant if it was really about safety. That question made silence impossible." Something shifted in Amara's expression. She felt the weight of his words. One question, one moment of truth-telling. It could change witnesses into allies. "Will you tell me everything you've seen?" she asked. "On these flights, the patterns you mentioned." "Yes," Gerald said. "Whatever you need." Amara pulled out her notepad. She wrote his name, his contact information. She asked specific questions about dates, flights, incidents. Gerald answered carefully. Precisely, his judicial training showed. He distinguished between what he knew directly and what he'd inferred. He noted which crew members had been present, which passengers had witnessed incidents. "This company has a culture problem," Gerald said. "It starts at the top and filters down. Pilots set the tone, crew follow, passengers absorb it." "What would it take to change it?" Amara asked. Gerald considered the question. "Leadership that names the problem, clear consequences for violations, and follow-through. Most companies fail at that last part." Amara felt determined. She would not fail at follow-through. This would not be another ignored complaint, another buried incident. "Thank you," she said, "for your honesty and your witness." Gerald stood. "I hope it helps, and I hope you have the authority to actually do something about this." "I do," Amara said simply. He returned to his seat. Amara watched him settle back into row 1. She felt grateful for his conscience, his willingness to confront his own complicity. Not everyone would be so honest. Not everyone would help. But some would, and that mattered. Elena stood in the galley, preparing coffee. Her movements were mechanical. She had been a flight attendant for 20 years. She knew every task by heart. But today, her hands shook slightly. She kept thinking about the woman in row 8, the quiet dignity, the gentle question that had cut through every excuse. The intercom crackled. Elena glanced at the speaker. Captain Hale's voice came through. He was talking to his co-pilot. "That's better," Hale said. His tone was casual. "Cabin was starting to look like a bus before we sorted out the seating." Elena froze. The coffee pot trembled in her hand. The co-pilot laughed. The sound was tinny through the speaker. "You always know how to handle these situations, Captain," the co-pilot said. "Experience, my friend. You learn who belongs where." Another laugh. The intercom clicked off. Silence filled the galley. Elena stared at the speaker. Her chest felt tight. A passenger stood nearby, an older woman who had been waiting for the lavatory. Her eyes were wide. She had heard everything. Elena's breath caught. The words echoed in her mind. Like a bus. Sorted out. Who belongs where? There was no ambiguity now. No professional language to hide behind. No policy justification. Just raw prejudice, stripped of euphemism. The cup in her hand slipped. It hit the counter and shattered. Coffee spread across the floor, dark and spreading. "Are you all right?" the waiting passenger asked. Her voice was concerned. Elena looked down at the broken pieces. "Yes, sorry, just clumsy." Her voice was unsteady. She knelt to clean the mess. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was reeling. 20 years. How many times had she witnessed this? How many times had she looked away? The passenger moved closer. She spoke quietly. "He shouldn't talk that way. About anyone." Elena felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. "He didn't mean for us to hear." "That makes it worse," the woman said. "Not better." Elena's breath caught. The woman was right. The private joke was more damning than a public statement. It revealed what Hale really thought when he believed no one was listening. She finished cleaning the spill. She stood and disposed of the broken cup. Her hands were still shaking. "I need to check on the passengers," Elena said. She walked through the cabin. Her smile was automatic, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the woman in row 8, the one Hale had sorted out. Elena felt shame burning in her chest. She had participated. She had shown the woman to the rear. She had offered the hollow apology about inconvenience and procedure. She reached row 8. Amara looked up from her notepad. Their eyes met. Elena felt something break inside her. She couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't pretend. Couldn't enable. "Can we talk?" Elena whispered. "Privately?" Amara studied her face. She nodded. "Of course." Elena knelt slightly beside Amara's seat. Her voice was low, urgent. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "The intercom was still on. I heard him, in the cockpit, talking to his co-pilot." She paused. "He said the cabin looked like a bus before he sorted out the seating." Amara felt cold settle in her stomach. She had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. Painful. "A bus," she repeated quietly. "Yes." Elena's voice was thick. "He said you learn who belongs where." He was laughing. The silence stretched. Amara processed the words, the historical weight, the deliberate cruelty of the metaphor. Elena continued. "A passenger heard it too. The woman waiting for the lavatory. She looked horrified." "What did you do?" Amara asked. Her tone wasn't harsh, just curious. "I dropped a cup. I cleaned it up. I pretended everything was normal." Elena's breath caught. "But it's not normal. It's never been normal." Amara felt something shift between them. Elena was breaking, or maybe she was finally becoming whole. "How long have you worked for this company?" Amara asked. 20 years, Elena said. "Senior flight attendant for the last 8. "And how many times have you seen this happen?" The question was direct. Elena closed her eyes. "Too many. Not always so obvious. But the pattern is there. Who gets asked to move? Who gets questioned about their seat? Who gets the cold service versus the warm welcome? Why didn't you speak up before?" Amara's voice was gentle, not accusing. "Fear," Elena said simply. "I have 2 kids, a mortgage. This job supports my family. Speaking up means risking everything." Amara felt the weight of that truth. Elena's silence had been a survival strategy, not cowardice, pragmatism. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't defend you. I'm sorry I showed you to this seat. I'm sorry I've let this happen to others." Her voice was thick with shame and anger. At Hale, at the company, at herself. Amara reached out and touched Elena's hand briefly. "What would you do if this were your company?" Elena looked up, surprised by the question. She considered it seriously. "I'd make sure he never treated anyone like that again," she said. Her voice was firm. "I'd create systems, training, clear consequences. I'd make it impossible to hide behind procedure." Something shifted in Amara's expression. That might be possible. Elena stared at her. Understanding dawned slowly. "You're not just a passenger, are you?" "No," Amara said. "I'm not." "Who are you?" Elena's voice was barely audible. "Someone with the authority to change things," Amara said carefully. "If I have witnesses willing to tell the truth." Elena's breath caught. Hope and fear warred in her expression. "You'd protect me? My job?" "Yes," Amara said. "And I'd protect every other employee and passenger who's endured this. That's the point." Elena was quiet. Then she nodded. "I'll tell you everything. Dates, flights, specific incidents, other crew members who've seen it." "Thank you," Amara said. Elena stood. Her shoulders were straighter now, less burdened. "No. Thank you. For asking the question about safety. For not letting it pass." She returned to the galley. Amara watched her go. She felt the shift. Elena had moved from complicit witness to courageous ally. That transformation mattered. Amara pulled out her phone, still in airplane mode, but she typed a detailed note. Elena's confession. The overheard intercom conversation. The witness who had heard it. The evidence was mounting. And when they landed, Captain Hale would face accountability. Amara opened a note app on her phone. She began documenting everything with systematic precision. Times, exact phrases, witness names, specific behaviors. She typed rapidly. Her mind worked like the strategist she was. This wasn't just about one captain's prejudice. It was about company culture, systemic failure, the silence that enabled abuse. She made a list for Marcus. Tasks that needed immediate attention when they landed. First, secure a private room at the destination terminal. Second, pull complete crew rosters and flight logs for Captain Hale. Third, review company policies on seating assignments and weight distribution. Fourth, identify all available witnesses willing to provide statements. She added specific requests. Video footage from the boarding area. Audio logs from cockpit communications. Previous complaints filed against Hale or other crew members. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Each detail mattered. Each piece of evidence would be essential. Amara felt calm, focused. This was familiar territory. She had built a tech company from nothing. She understood systems, documentation, strategic planning. But she also understood something deeper. This wasn't just business. It was personal, It was about dignity, about every person who had been diminished by casual cruelty. She thought about Naomi. Her mother had cleaned offices in buildings she could never afford to work in properly. She had been invisible to the people she served, told where she could eat, where she could sit, where she belonged. Amara's jaw tightened. She would not let that legacy continue, not in her company, not on her watch. She looked up from her phone. Elena was moving through the cabin again, but something had changed. Her posture was different, more upright, less apologetic. When Elena reached David Richardson's row, he made a comment. Amara couldn't hear the words, but she saw Elena's response. Firm, professional, setting a boundary. David looked surprised. He settled back with a frown. Elena moved on without apology. Amara felt something shift in her chest. Pride mixed with hope. Elena was already changing, already refusing to participate in the old patterns. She returned to her notes. She drafted an outline for the post-flight meeting. Who would attend? What questions she would ask? What outcomes were possible? Termination was one option. Immediate, decisive. It would send a clear message. But would it change anything systemically? Or would it just remove one symptom while leaving the disease intact? She considered alternatives. Suspension with mandatory training. Public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Monitored probation with clear benchmarks. Restoration contingent on genuine change. That was harder. Messier. It required faith in transformation. But it also offered something punishment alone couldn't. The possibility of real growth. Amara saved her notes. She would discuss options with Marcus, with legal counsel, with her board if necessary. But ultimately the decision was hers. She owned the company. She set the culture. She determined what accountability looked like. The engines droned steadily outside. Amara closed her eyes briefly. She let herself feel the full weight of what had happened. The humiliation, the anger, the bone-deep exhaustion of being denied dignity. Then she opened her eyes. She looked out the window at the endless sky, and she began planning not just punishment, but transformation. The cabin atmosphere had changed, subtle but unmistakable. Passengers who had witnessed the seating incident now watched Elena differently. Some with sympathy, others with curiosity. The woman who had been waiting for the lavatory spoke quietly to her husband. He frowned, shook his head. They both glanced toward the cockpit door. David Richardson noticed the shift. He called Elena over. His voice was irritated. Is there a problem? People seem upset. Elena's voice was calm. Everything is fine, sir. It doesn't feel fine, he pressed. There's tension in the cabin. Elena met his eyes. Perhaps people are uncomfortable with what they witnessed during boarding. David's face reddened. The captain made a safety decision. That's his prerogative. Of course, Elena said. Her tone was neutral. She moved away before he could continue. Amara watched the exchange from her seat. Elena was no longer deferential, no longer apologizing for things that weren't her fault. Gerald approached Elena near the galley. His voice was quiet, but Amara could hear fragments. I need to ask you something, Gerald said. The captain's decision to move that passenger, was it really about weight distribution? Elena hesitated. Then something shifted in her expression. Resolve replaced fear. No, she said quietly. It wasn't. Gerald nodded. Thank you for your honesty. I should have said something earlier, Elena said. Her voice was thick. I've let this happen too many times. You're saying something now, Gerald replied. That matters. The older couple in pearls watched the interaction. The wife leaned toward her husband. Their whispers were urgent, concerned. Some passengers tried to ignore the tension. They focused on magazines, phones, sleep, anything to avoid confronting what they had witnessed. But others couldn't look away. The woman who had heard the intercom kept glancing at the cockpit door. Her expression was troubled. Mr. Patterson caught Gerald's eye as he returned to his seat. They exchanged a significant look, an unspoken understanding. Gerald stopped at Amara's row. People are talking, quietly, but they're talking. About what happened? Amara asked. About what they saw, what they heard, what they wish they'd done differently. He paused. Consciousness is spreading. Amara felt something shift in her chest. This was how change happened. Not through grand gestures, through quiet conversations, uncomfortable questions, people choosing courage over convenience. Will they speak up? She asked. If asked officially? Gerald considered. Some will, others won't. But you'll have enough witnesses, including me. And Elena, Amara added. Yes, Gerald said. She's the key witness. She heard him in the cockpit. She can testify to the pattern. Amara nodded. She felt the pieces coming together. Documentation, witnesses, physical evidence, a clear pattern of discrimination. Gerald returned to his seat. The cabin settled into uneasy quiet. People were thinking, processing, deciding what kind of witnesses they would be. Amara looked out the window. They were beginning their descent. Soon they would land. Soon Captain Hale would discover that the woman he had sent to the back was actually the woman who owned the plane. She felt her breath catch. Not from nervousness, from anticipation. Justice was coming. Not revenge. Justice. The seatbelt sign chimed on. Captain Hale's voice filled the cabin, smooth, professional, reassuring. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our descent into Charlotte. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for arrival. Amara listened to his voice. He sounded confident, competent, every inch the experienced captain. No one listening would guess what he had done, what he had said. She felt doubt creeping in. Not about what had happened. That was clear. But about her response. Was she overreacting? It was one seat, one flight. He had thousands of hours in the air, a spotless safety record. Did one incident justify destroying his career? She closed her eyes. The old familiar voice whispered, Maybe you're being too sensitive. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. Maybe you should just let it go. Amara's chest tightened. She recognized that voice. It was the voice of survival. The voice that had kept her safe through countless microaggressions. The voice that said silence was easier than confrontation. But it was also the voice that had kept her small. That had taught her to accept less than she deserved. To question her own perceptions. To prioritize others' comfort over her own dignity. She opened her eyes. She looked around the cabin. At Gerald, who had chosen conscience over comfort. At Elena, who had finally found courage. At the other passengers, some of whom were just beginning to understand what they had witnessed. This wasn't about one seat. It was about a system, a pattern, a culture that had operated unchallenged for decades. Amara thought about Naomi. Her mother had swallowed this feeling hundreds of times. She had moved to the back when told, had accepted separate facilities, had smiled through humiliation because she had no other choice. But Amara had a choice. She had power, authority, the ability to demand change. And if she stayed silent now, what did that make her? Her hands rested on the armrests. Her fingers wanted to grip tightly. She kept them relaxed, steady. She would not let this pass. She would not normalize it. She would not prioritize Hale's reputation over the dignity of every person he had treated this way. But she would be fair. She would document everything. She would offer due process. She would create a path forward that included accountability and the possibility of change. The plane descended through clouds. Charlotte's skyline appeared below. Amara felt her breath catch, not from fear, from determination. Elena moved through the cabin, checking seatbelts. When she reached Amara's row, their eyes met. "Thank you," Elena whispered, "for not letting this go." Amara felt something shift in her chest. The doubt receded. This wasn't just about her. It was about Elena, about Gerald, about every passenger and employee who deserved better. "I won't," Amara said simply. Elena nodded. She continued her checks. Her shoulders were straight. Her movements were confident. The plane touched down. The wheels screeched against the runway. The engines roared in reverse. They were slowing, landing, arriving. Amara looked out the window at the terminal building. Marcus would be waiting. The private lounge would be ready. The documentation would be prepared. And Captain Hale would face the consequences of his actions. Not just punishment, accountability, the kind that might actually change something. The plane taxied to the gate. Amara felt her heartbeat steady. Strong. She was ready for what came next. The plane stopped at the gate. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Passengers stood and gathered their belongings. The usual post-flight bustle filled the cabin. Amara remained seated. She watched people file past. Some avoided her eyes. Others glanced at her with curiosity or sympathy. Gerald paused at her row. "I'll wait for you in the terminal, in case you need me." "Thank you," Amara said. He moved on. David Richardson hurried past without acknowledging her. Mr. Patterson nodded politely. The cabin emptied gradually. Amara stood when most passengers had disembarked. She retrieved her bag from the overhead compartment. Her movements were calm, deliberate. She walked down the aisle toward the exit. Elena stood near the door. Their eyes met briefly. Elena's expression was nervous but hopeful. Amara descended the stairs to the tarmac. 2 ground crew members waited at the bottom. They wore company uniforms with identification badges. One stepped forward. His voice was respectful, professional. "Ms. Lewis, welcome to Charlotte. We have a car ready to take you to the owner's lounge." The other crew member nodded. "Ms. Lewis, our owner representative, it's an honor to have you here." Their voices carried across the tarmac, clear, audible, unmistakable. Amara saw Captain Hale standing near the plane's nose. He was conducting a post-flight inspection. His tablet was in hand. He looked up at the sound of her name. His face registered confusion, then shock. His eyes widened. He looked from Amara to the crew members, back to Amara. "Ms. Lewis," he repeated. His voice was uncertain. Amara met his gaze steadily. She said nothing. She simply held his eyes. Let him process. Let him understand. Something shifted in Hale's expression. Realization dawned. Color drained from his face. His hand tightened on the tablet. The crew member continued, oblivious to the tension. "Is the owner's lounge ready for our meeting? Mr. Bell said it's urgent." "Yes," Amara said. Her voice was calm, clear. "The lounge is ready, and I believe we'll need Captain Hale to join us." She turned to Hale directly. "Captain, I'd appreciate if you could come to the owner's lounge after you complete your post-flight duties." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. They both knew it. Hale's throat worked. "Of course, Ms. Lewis, I'll be there shortly." His voice was tight, professional on the surface, panicked underneath. Amara nodded. She turned to the waiting vehicle. The crew member opened the door for her. She climbed in without looking back. As the car pulled away, she glanced in the side mirror. Hale stood frozen on the tarmac. His face was pale. His confident posture had collapsed. The woman he had ordered to the back. The woman he had humiliated. The woman whose presence made the cabin look like a bus. That woman owned the plane, owned the company, owned his career. Amara felt her breath catch, not from satisfaction, not from vindication, but from the weight of what came next. She had the power now. The question was what she would do with it. Destroy him, transform him, use this moment for punishment or for change. The car approached the terminal building. Marcus stood waiting outside the owner's lounge. His expression was grim, protective. Amara stepped out. Marcus embraced her briefly. "I got your message," he said. "What happened?" "Everything," Amara said. "And now we fix it." The owner's lounge overlooked the runway through floor-to-ceiling glass. Amara stood at the window watching planes take off. Marcus sat at the conference table arranging documents. "Tell me everything," Marcus said. His voice was controlled but angry. Amara turned from the window. She sat across from him. Her voice was steady as she recounted the morning, the cold reception, the boarding challenges, Hale's order to move. "He said it was about weight and balance," Amara said, "but Elena heard him in the cockpit. He told his co-pilot the cabin looked like a bus." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Rage flashed across his face. "We fire him! Today! Immediately! No severance! No references!" Amara felt the appeal of that solution. Swift, decisive, final. But she raised her hand. "Slow down." "Slow down?" Marcus's voice was incredulous. "He humiliated you. He used Jim Crow language. He's been doing this for who knows how long." "I know," Amara said, "and all of that is true. But I need to think clearly, not react from anger." Marcus leaned back. He studied her face. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about what actually changes things," Amara said. "Firing one pilot sends a message. But does it change the culture? Does it prevent the next incident?" "It shows consequences," Marcus said. "It shows we don't tolerate this behavior." "True," Amara said. "But what if we could do more? What if we could document this so thoroughly that it becomes a case study, training material, a clear line in the sand?" Marcus was quiet. He looked at the documents spread before him. Flight logs, company policies, previous complaints that had been dismissed or minimized. "You want to use this," he said slowly, "as a teaching moment." "I want to use this as transformation," Amara said. "Not just punishment. Yes, Hale needs consequences, but the company needs systemic change." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Understanding mixed with respect. "What do you need?" "Everything. Documented. Witness statements from Elena, Gerald, anyone else willing to speak. I want audio logs if they exist, previous complaints, seating data showing patterns." Marcus nodded. He made notes. "I can have most of that within an hour. Elena and the retired judge are waiting outside. Others might be willing." "Good," Amara said. "Bring them in, one at a time. Let me hear their accounts directly." "And Hale?" Marcus asked. Amara's jaw tightened. "He comes last, after I've heard from everyone else, after I've reviewed every piece of evidence, after I know exactly what I'm dealing with." "He's going to try to defend himself," Marcus said. "Claim misunderstanding, cite his safety record, maybe even threaten legal action." "Let him," Amara said. Her voice was calm. "I have witnesses, documentation, and most importantly, I have the truth." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. He had wanted vengeance, but Amara was offering something more powerful. Justice paired with institutional reform. "You're a better person than I am," he said quietly. "I'm angry too," Amara said. "Don't mistake strategy for weakness. I'm furious. But I also remember my mother's voice. She taught me that real power isn't about destruction. It's about building something better." The silence stretched between them. Marcus stood. "I'll bring in the witnesses, starting with Elena," Amara nodded. She turned back to the window. Another plane was taking off, rising into clear sky. She watched it climb and wondered if her company could do the same. Captain Hale walked through the terminal. His steps were measured. Professional. But his mind was racing. The woman from row 8, the passenger he had moved. She was the owner. He replayed every interaction, every word, every assumption. His stomach tightened. The owner's lounge door stood before him. Hale straightened his uniform. He rehearsed his defense. Safety protocols, weight distribution, standard procedures. He had followed policy. He had done nothing wrong. He knocked. Marcus opened the door. His expression was cold. "Captain Hale," Marcus said. "Come in." Hale entered. The room was spacious, elegant. The conference table dominated the center. Amara sat at the head. Elena sat along one side. Gerald sat beside her. Something shifted in Hale's expression. This wasn't a private conversation. This was a tribunal. "Please sit, Captain," Amara said. Her voice was calm. Hale sat. His hands rested on the table. He noticed Elena wouldn't meet his eyes. Gerald watched him with judicial assessment. Marcus moved to stand beside Amara. He spoke formally. "Captain Hale, I'd like to introduce Ms. Amara Lewis, majority owner of this aviation company and the aircraft you flew today." The words landed like physical blows. Hale felt his face flush. "Ms. Lewis, I had no idea." "Obviously," Amara said. Her tone was neutral. The silence stretched. Hale realized she was waiting, forcing him to speak next, to explain, to defend. "If I had known who you were, I would have—" He stopped himself. The sentence revealed too much. "You would have what?" Amara asked quietly. "Treated me differently? Allowed me to stay in my assigned seat? Been more careful with your language?" Hale's throat tightened. "I meant no disrespect. The seating change was purely about safety, weight and balance protocols." "Was it?" Amara's eyes found his. "Then why did no other passenger in the forward section need to move?" "The distribution worked out with you relocating," Hale said. His voice was stiff. Marcus pushed a document across the table. "Here's the actual weight and balance calculation for today's flight. Please show us where the safety issue was." Hale looked at the numbers. His face paled. The distribution had been fine. Well within normal parameters. There had been no safety issue. "Elena," Amara said, "would you please tell Captain Hale what you heard over the intercom?" Elena's voice was steady. "The cockpit channel was still open to the galley. I heard you tell your co-pilot that the cabin was starting to look like a bus before you sorted out the seating." Hale felt something cold settle in his chest. The joke, the casual comment. He had forgotten the intercom. "You also said, 'You learn who belongs where,'" Elena continued. Her voice was firmer now. "Another passenger heard it too." The silence hung heavy. Hale wanted to protest, to explain it away, but the words caught in his throat. Gerald spoke. His voice was measured, judicial. "I witnessed the entire incident, Captain. I saw your demeanor change when you looked at Ms. Lewis. I heard your tone. I watched the selective enforcement of supposed policy. I've been a judge for 30 years, Gerald continued. I know what discrimination looks like, even when it hides behind procedure." Hale felt his carefully constructed defense crumbling. The weight calculations exposed his lie. The intercom recording revealed his true thoughts. The witnesses confirmed the pattern. Amara leaned forward slightly. Her eyes found his. "Captain Hale, I'm going to ask you one question, and I need an honest answer." Hale nodded. He couldn't speak. "Would you have spoken to me the same way if I looked like the gentleman in seat 2A? The question hung in the air. Simple, Direct. Devastating. Hale opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence was an answer. The most damning answer possible. Amara waited. The silence stretched. Captain Hale sat across from her, his face pale. His throat worked, but no words came. "I'll take your silence as confirmation," Amara said quietly. "No, you would not have treated me the same way if I looked different." Hale found his voice. "Ms. Lewis, I've been flying for 25 years. My safety record is spotless. I've never had a complaint." Marcus slid another document forward. "Actually, you've had 7 complaints in the past 3 years, all dismissed or minimized. Would you like me to read them?" Something shifted in Hale's expression. Fear replaced defensiveness. Marcus began reading. March 2023. Passenger reported being questioned about seat assignment. Complaint dismissed as misunderstanding. July 2023. Passenger reported cold treatment and being asked to move during boarding. No action taken. October 2023. Flight attendant reported concerns about captain's comments regarding certain passengers. Complaint marked as unsubstantiated. Marcus continued through all 7. Each one followed the same pattern. Complaints from passengers of color, concerns from crew members, all dismissed, all buried. Elena spoke. Her voice was thick. "I submitted 2 of those complaints. I was told to be more professional, to stop causing problems." Hale looked at her. "Elena, I never meant—" "Don't," Elena said. Her voice was firm. "Don't minimize this. You treated people differently based on how they looked. You created hostile environments. You made my job harder because I had to clean up after your prejudice." Amara felt proud of Elena. The flight attendant had found her voice, her courage. Gerald added his perspective. "Captain, I fly this route frequently. I've watched you interact with passengers. The pattern is clear. Warmth for some, distance for others. The deciding factor is always appearance." "I never physically harmed anyone," Hale said. His voice was desperate now. "I never used slurs. I just tried to maintain certain standards." "Whose standards?" Amara asked. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Who decided that I didn't belong in row 3? That my presence made the cabin look unacceptable? That my assigned seat somehow violated standards?" Hale's breath caught. He couldn't answer. "I'll tell you whose standards," Amara continued. "Standards rooted in bias, in assumptions about who deserves dignity and who doesn't, in the belief that some people naturally belong in the front while others belong in the back." Something shifted in Hale's expression. The truth was settling. Uncomfortable. Undeniable. "You used the word bus," Amara said. "Do you understand the historical weight of that metaphor? The deliberate cruelty? The echo of segregation?" Hale looked down. His hands trembled slightly. "I didn't think about it that way." "That's the problem," Gerald said. "You didn't have to think about it. The people you harmed had no choice but to think about it, to feel it, to carry it." The silence stretched. Amara watched Hale. She saw shame beginning to penetrate his defenses, but she also saw self-preservation, the instinct to protect his career, his reputation, his sense of being a good person. "What happens now?" Hale asked. His voice was small. Amara felt the weight of that question. She had the power to answer, the authority to decide. She looked at Marcus, at Elena, at Gerald. They were all watching, waiting. She thought about Naomi, about dignity, about the difference between punishment and transformation, about what kind of leader she wanted to be. The room fell quiet. Amara felt everyone waiting for her response. The power was intoxicating. She could end Hale's career with a word, reclaim every stolen moment of dignity. She felt the anger rise, hot, righteous. He had humiliated her, treated her as less than human, made her walk to the back of her own plane. "You're fired," she could say. Simple. Final. Just. She imagined his face, the shock, the devastation. 25 years of flying gone. His reputation destroyed, his pension threatened, everything he had built crumbling, and she would be justified, completely, morally, legally. No one would question her decision. Marcus watched her. His expression said he would support whatever choice she made. Fire Hale. Sue him. Make an example so severe that no one would ever repeat his mistakes. Amara felt the appeal of that path, the satisfaction, the sense of power reclaimed. She could do to him what he had tried to do to her, make him small, invisible, pushed to the margins. But then she heard Naomi's voice, a memory from childhood, a lesson delivered with quiet strength. "Baby, anyone can break something. That's easy. The hard thing is building something better." Amara closed her eyes briefly. She thought about what she actually wanted. Not revenge, not the hollow satisfaction of destruction. She wanted change, real change, lasting change. Firing Hale would send a message. But what message? That power crushes those who wield it wrong? Or that accountability can coexist with restoration? She opened her eyes. She looked at Hale. Really looked. She saw fear, shame, defensiveness, but also something else. The first crack of awareness, the beginning of understanding. "Captain Hale," she said. Her voice was calm. "Do you understand what you did? Not just the policy violation, the human impact." Hale's throat worked. I think I'm starting to." "Tell me," Amara said, "in your own words." The silence stretched. Hale struggled. His defenses warred with emerging conscience. "I made assumptions," he finally said, "based on appearance. I treated you as if you didn't belong. I humiliated you. I made you feel less than." His voice was thick, genuine emotion breaking through. "And the others?" Amara asked. "The 7 complaints, the passengers you questioned, the crew members you dismissed." "I did the same to them," Hale said. "I created an environment where people felt unwelcome, judged, diminished." Something shifted in Amara's chest. He was beginning to see, not fully, not perfectly, but genuinely. She looked at Elena. The flight attendant was crying quietly. 20 years of buried pain releasing. She looked at Gerald. The judge nodded slightly. An acknowledgement. Perhaps approval. She looked at Marcus. His expression was complex. He still wanted blood. But he trusted her judgment. Amara felt the weight of choice. This moment would define not just Hale's future. It would define her leadership, her company's culture, the message she sent to every employee and passenger. She could choose destruction, or she could choose something harder. Accountability paired with possibility, consequences with a door left open. "Here's what's going to happen," Amara said. Her voice was firm, clear. She had made her decision. Everyone leaned forward, waiting. The room held its breath. Amara's voice was steady. "Captain Hale, you are suspended without pay effective immediately. The suspension is indefinite pending completion of comprehensive bias and sensitivity training." Hale's face paled, but she continued. "You will participate in a structured program addressing implicit bias, discrimination, and the historical context of segregation. You will complete readings, reflections, and face-to-face sessions with experts." Marcus took notes. His expression was carefully neutral. "Upon completion of training," Amara said, "you will provide a written acknowledgement of your actions and their impact. No justifications, no excuses, just honest accountability. You will also apologize," she continued, "face to face, to me, to Elena, to every crew member who filed complaints that were dismissed. to any passenger who is willing to receive it." Elena's breath caught. Justice was taking shape. Real justice. "Your return to flying," Amara said, "is not guaranteed. It will depend on several factors: genuine engagement with training, quality of your written reflection, sincerity of your apologies, and most importantly, sustained changed behavior. If you do return," she added, "it will be under monitored conditions: quarterly reviews, passenger feedback surveys, crew evaluations. Any indication of repeated behavior results in immediate termination." Hale listened. His face showed complex emotions: fear, relief, shame, gratitude. "Why?" he asked. His voice was barely audible. "Why not just fire me? I deserve it." Amara felt her chest tighten. "Because I believe people can change, not easily, not quickly, but genuinely. And because I want this company to stand for something more than punishment. I want us to stand for accountability that leads somewhere," she continued. "For consequences paired with possibility. For justice that doesn't just destroy but transforms." Something shifted in the room. Elena wiped her eyes. Gerald nodded with judicial approval. Even Marcus's expression softened. "This is not mercy," Amara said firmly. "This is harder than firing you. You will have to face yourself, confront your beliefs, acknowledge your harm. That's more difficult than simply losing your job." "And if you fail?" Hale asked. "Then you're done," Amara said. "No appeals, no second chances. This is the only door I'm opening. You can walk through it or not. Your choice." The silence hung heavy. Hale looked at each person in the room. Elena, Gerald, Marcus, finally Amara. "I accept," he whispered. "All of it. I accept." His voice was thick with emotion. Not just fear of consequences. Something deeper. The beginning of genuine remorse. "Good," Amara said. "Marcus will provide you with the training program details. You start tomorrow, you're dismissed." Hale stood. His movements were slow, aged. He looked at Amara. "Thank you. I know I don't deserve—" "Don't thank me," Amara said. "Thank me with changed behavior, with genuine growth, with becoming someone who never makes another person feel what you made me feel today." Hale nodded. He left the room. His confident pilot's stride was gone, replaced by something humbler, more uncertain, more human. The door closed behind him. Marcus exhaled. "That was either brilliant or insane, maybe both." Elena spoke. Her voice was steady. "That was leadership. Real leadership." Gerald stood. "If I could offer one observation, you just taught everyone in this company what accountability looks like, not vengeance. Accountability, that matters." Amara felt exhausted, drained, but also clear. She had made the right choice, the hard choice, the choice that might actually change things. "Now comes the harder part," Marcus said. "Changing the culture, making sure this never happens again." Amara smiled. "Then let's get to work." The next weeks moved quickly. Amara and Marcus worked 16-hour days. They turned Hale's incident into an anonymized case study, distributed it company-wide with new training protocols. The case study was detailed, clinical. It described the seating incident, the fabricated safety justification, the overheard comment, the pattern of complaints, but it removed identifying information. "This could be any of us," the training materials said. "Bias operates below conscious awareness. It hides behind policy. It masquerades as professionalism." Staff members read it. Some dismissed it as political correctness. Others felt defensive. But many recognized themselves in the patterns described. Marcus implemented new reporting systems, anonymous channels for complaints, independent review boards, clear consequences, no more buried reports, no more dismissed concerns. Elena found herself approached by other crew members. Quietly. In break rooms and parking lots, they shared their own stories, incidents they had witnessed, discomfort they had swallowed. "I didn't know how to say something," one flight attendant confessed. "I thought it was just how things were." Elena felt both sad and hopeful. Sad for all the silent suffering. Hopeful because people were finally speaking. The culture was shifting. She met with Amara regularly. They discussed policy changes. Elena offered frontline perspective. What worked? What felt performative? What would actually make a difference? "People need to see consequences," Elena said. "Not just training, real accountability. Otherwise they won't believe change is possible." "You're right," Amara said. "That's why we're documenting everything. Every training completed, every apology delivered, every behavioral change measured." She paused. "And every failure, too. If this doesn't work, we'll know. We'll have data. We can adjust." Elena felt respected, valued. Her 20 years of experience suddenly mattered. She wasn't just executing someone else's vision, she was helping shape it. "I want you to lead the crew training," Amara said. "You know what needs to change. You've lived the reality. You're the right person." Something shifted in Elena's expression. Pride mixed with purpose. "Yes, I'll do it." An email went out company-wide, announcing the new owner, introducing Amara, explaining her vision, promising accountability and change. Staff responses varied. Some were enthusiastic, others skeptical. A few were angry at perceived political correctness, but everyone paid attention. Everyone understood something fundamental had shifted. Amara made herself visible. She flew on different routes, observed interactions, talked with crew and passengers. She was building relationships, establishing trust, showing that ownership meant engagement. Hale progressed through his training. Marcus monitored his participation. The reports were mixed. Some days he engaged genuinely. Others he seemed defensive. The process was hard, uncomfortable. That was the point. "Change doesn't happen in comfort," Amara told Marcus. "He needs to struggle. That's how growth works." 3 months passed, then 6. The incident became company lore, not hidden, not buried, acknowledged as a turning point, a moment when things could have continued as before or could change. They chose change. Gerald sent Amara an email, short, simple. "You're proving that justice can be restorative. The legal community is noticing. Thank you for showing a better way." Amara felt grateful for his witness, his willingness to speak up, his judicial perspective on what she was attempting. She called Naomi every few days, updated her mother on progress, shared doubts and victories, drew strength from the woman who had taught her about dignity. "You're doing good work, baby," Naomi said. "Changing hearts is harder than changing policies, but it's the only thing that lasts." Amara felt her throat tighten. "I hope so, Mama. I really hope so." 6 months after the incident, Amara boarded another company jet. This time she flew with Marcus. They were traveling to inspect a new facility. She dressed professionally, but not extravagantly. She wanted to observe naturally, see how things had changed. Or if they had changed. The terminal receptionist greeted them warmly. Equally, no difference in tone between passengers. Amara noticed. She appreciated it. At the gate, Elena stood ready. She smiled when she saw Amara. Genuine, professional, the smile of a colleague and ally. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Lewis. Mr. Bell?" Elena's voice was confident. They boarded. Amara observed everything, how Elena interacted with all passengers. Her warmth was consistent now. Real, not reserved for certain faces. A young black woman sat in row 2. She looked nervous. "First-time flyer, maybe," Elena noticed. "First time flying with us?" Elena asked gently. Yes, the woman said. Is this seat okay? I wasn't sure. It's perfect, Elena said. Her voice was warm. You're exactly where you belong. Let me know if you need anything. Something shifted in Amara's chest. Those words, you're exactly where you belong. They mattered. They healed. Another passenger needed a seat change. An older white man. His original seat had a broken tray table. Elena handled it smoothly, found him another location. No drama, no assumptions, just professional service. The captain came through for pre-flight checks. A different pilot. Younger. He greeted every passenger equally. Asked about comfort, answered questions patiently. Amara felt cautiously optimistic. This was better. Not perfect, but genuinely improved. During the flight, she watched interactions. Elena moved through the cabin with confidence. She addressed concerns quickly. She treated everyone with respect. The change was visible. Marcus leaned over. It's working. Not everywhere yet, but it's spreading. Yes, Amara said. Slowly, but yes. They landed smoothly. As passengers disembarked, the young woman from row 2 approached Elena. Thank you, she said quietly, for making me feel welcome. I was worried I'd be, I don't know, treated differently. Elena's eyes found hers. That shouldn't be a worry, ever. I'm sorry if past experiences made you feel that way. We're working to be better. The woman nodded. She smiled. A small but genuine expression of relief. Amara watched this exchange from her seat. She felt her breath catch. This was it. This small, ordinary moment. This was the real measure of change. Not grand announcements, not policy documents, but individual moments of dignity, of welcome, of belonging. She thought about the long journey, the humiliation on that first flight, the anger, the temptation to simply destroy, the harder choice to transform. It had been worth it. Messy, imperfect, but worth it. Elena approached after the cabin emptied. How did we do? Better, Amara said honestly. Much better. Keep going. Elena smiled. We will. Every flight, every interaction. We'll keep getting better. Amara stood. She descended the stairs. The tarmac felt different now. This was still her plane, her company, but it was becoming what she had envisioned, a place where dignity was the standard, where everyone belonged. Marcus walked beside her. Ready for the next challenge? Always, Amara said. She felt strong, clear, ready. 1 year later, Amara sat in seat 3B, her original seat, the one she had been ordered to leave. She chose it deliberately, a quiet reclamation. The plane climbed through morning clouds. Sunlight streamed through the windows. She looked out at the endless sky and felt grateful. The year had been hard. 3 pilots had left. When training became mandatory, they refused to participate, called it political overreach. Amara let them go without regret. 2 crew members had filed new complaints, different incidents, different flights. But the new system worked. Investigations happened quickly. Accountability followed. The culture was shifting. Captain Hale had completed his training. His written reflection was painful to read. Raw, honest. He acknowledged harm without excuse, named his bias without deflection. He apologized to Elena face to face. She accepted. Cautiously, with clear boundaries. But she accepted. He had returned to flying, under strict monitoring. Quarterly reviews showed improvement. Passenger feedback was neutral to positive. He was different. Maybe not transformed, but genuinely different. I don't know if he'll ever fully get it, Marcus had said, but he's trying. That's more than most people do. Amara agreed. Change was gradual, imperfect, but possible. She thought about Naomi. Her mother had called yesterday. Her voice was proud. You did it, baby. You didn't just own planes, you changed hearts. I'm still trying, Mama, Amara had said, every day. That's all any of us can do, Naomi replied. Keep trying. Keep building something better. The plane leveled at cruising altitude. Amara closed her eyes. She thought about all the small moments that had led here, the humiliation that could have broken her, the anger that could have consumed her, the choice to build instead of destroy. She thought about Elena finding her voice, Gerald choosing conscience, Hale confronting his bias, the young woman in row 2 feeling welcome. None of it was perfect. Some days felt like backsliding. Other days showed real progress, but the trajectory was clear. They were moving toward something better. Amara opened her eyes. She looked around the cabin. People of all backgrounds sat scattered throughout, no invisible lines, no unspoken hierarchy, just passengers sharing space. It looked ordinary. That was the point. Dignity should be ordinary. Welcome should be ordinary. Belonging should be the default, not the exception. She pulled out her phone. She had been documenting this journey, not for publicity, for herself, to remember why this mattered, why the hard work was worth it. She typed a final note. Year 1 complete. Culture change is possible. It requires courage, consistency, willingness to be uncomfortable. But it's possible. She paused, then added, and it requires owning not just property, but responsibility, for the moral atmosphere, for the dignity of every person. That's the real measure of leadership. Amara saved the note. She looked out the window again. The sky stretched endlessly, blue and bright and full of possibility. She thought about the road ahead. More training, more challenges, more moments when bias would try to hide behind policy. She would keep confronting it, keep building better systems, keep insisting on dignity. Elena appeared with a beverage tray. She smiled at Amara. What can I get you? Coffee, please, Amara said. Elena poured carefully. She set the cup down with a napkin. How's everything going? Good, Amara said. Really good. You? Better than I ever imagined, Elena said. Her voice was quiet but firm. Thank you. For everything. Amara felt her chest tighten. Thank you for your courage, for speaking up. You changed this company as much as I did. Elena nodded. Something passed between them. Understanding. Solidarity. Shared victory. She moved on to serve other passengers. Amara watched her go. Watched her treat everyone with equal warmth, equal professionalism, equal dignity. Amara sipped her coffee. It was good, strong, exactly right. She settled back into her seat. Her seat. The one she had fought for. The one she had reclaimed. But more than that. She had reclaimed something larger. The right to belong. To be seen. To move through the world without constantly proving her worth, not just for herself, for everyone. That was the point. That was always the point. The plane flew steadily. Amara closed her eyes. She breathed deeply. In and out. Calm. Centered. Ready for whatever came next. She had learned something important this year. Power wasn't about control. It was about responsibility. About using whatever authority she had to create space for dignity, for everyone. The stars didn't look like strangers anymore. The sky felt like home. And she was finally, genuinely free.